Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone can hear me in the chat, just push 1 for confirmation that you can hear me. All right, got my confirmation that I was looking for. Thank you, Reigning Woman. Good evening to you. Complex Design, what's going on? Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 329. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab like we've posted this week. There's a docket in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with. Tonight is Space and Technology, episode 329. Open panel, if you want to join, link will be in the chat. Make sure you raise your hand while you're in the waiting room so that we can advance you to the panel. And you're not just sitting there waiting. Just as a reminder, we're still doing IT mentorship. So if you want to get into IT and you need a mentor, some guidance, we can actually provide you with that. We also do IT coaching. So if you want to go from one IT position to another and you need someone to look over your resume or to coach you on some of the skill sets necessary to transition to another position, we also provide that as well. And also as another reminder and an addendum, Reigning Woman, who's a moderator in the chat, also does life coaching. So if you need some life coaching and need to get yourself back on track, Reigning Woman actually offers that. Make sure you subscribe to her channel and talk to her if you need some life coaching. All right. We'll get started on the first item on the docket. All right, so first item on the docket is from the Linux Foundation, hyperledger.org. Introducing Hyperledger Avalon. We are very excited to announce the latest of the Hyperledger projects, Hyperledger Avalon. Some of you may know Avalon as TCF, or Trusted Compute Framework, the name it held during the initial phases of its collaborative development. In fact, that collaboration is one of the standout aspects of Hyperledger Avalon. It is an interesting intersection of Hyperledger, EEA, and cloud service provider ecosystems, and is perhaps the most broadly sponsored project to date. It brings together sponsorship from Intel, iExec Blockchain Tech, Alibaba Cloud, Baidu, BGI, Chainlink, Consensus, EEA, Espio, IBM, Coledio, Microsoft, Banco Santander, Wipro, Oracle, and Monox. That's quite a list of sponsors by any standard. The natural question is, what could drive so much interest? There are a couple of key challenges with blockchain that probably don't surprise any reader of this blog. Scalability and confidentiality. One approach to both of these limitations is to perform some operations off-chain. In traditional view of a blockchain, the data validation logic for every transaction takes place on every node of the blockchain network or on-chain. It's this redundancy and transparency that provides a network with its integrity, but also comes at the cost of a performance and confidentiality. By offloading some work, participants can trade off resiliency and integrity for performance and confidentiality. Of course, everyone wants to have their cake and eat it too. And so the use of trusted computing is intended to maintain resiliency and integrity guarantees as much as possible while offloading additional performance and confidentiality. Trusted computing includes a variety of techniques to ensure that computation was done correctly and secretly. Hyperledger Avalon will realize these are different worker types and include TEE, trusted execution environments like Intel SGX, MPC, multi-party compute, and ZK, zero knowledge proofs. It is also worth understanding a little of the project's history to see how these communities came together. Avalon began as a reference implementation of the EEA's off-chain trusted compute specification, which sought to standardize how to farm out and reconcile workloads. Coming out of the EEA specifications discussions, iExec was excited to build a heart disease evaluation prototype. iExec also immediately dove into building the Ethereum components for Avalon's proxy model. In parallel, Mike Bowman was exploring trusted execution uses in a Hyperledger lab called Private Data Objects, PDO. The initial Avalon authors forked off the PDO code base and launched it as another lab with Hyperledger. Hyperledger Labs is a place to facilitate collaboration and experimentation among the projects, in this case, spawning some interesting trusted computing code from a couple disparate sources. Having tangible code enabled other contributors to see directly how they could make use of and integrate with this approach. For example, IBM prototyped this Hyperledger Fabric integration with Avalon. Now that Avalon has matriculated to full project at Hyperledger, we are excited to continue maturing and expanding the code base. Some of the initial areas we plan on we plan to work on solidifying the Hyperledger Fabric integration and similarly working with another new addition to Hyperledger, the Ethereum client, Hyperledger Vessel. We may even be some new types, some new things to say at DevCon 5. So Hyperledger is a form of blockchain. For those of you who don't know and understand what we're talking about here. And what's happening here is that they've come up with a new integration component within Hyperledger projects for trusted computing. Basically, a lot of your blockchain activity is done on the blockchain, so that puts a lot of stress on it from a hardware resources standpoint and a performance standpoint. And what they're doing with this Hyperledger Avalon is they're decoupling some of the areas that are not necessary for performance. And so they decouple the components that are not necessary and do all the processing offline and then hand it right back to the blockchain itself, to the Hyperledger itself. So as an example, it would be like UPS and FedEx doesn't like to come into the city to deliver certain packages because it's not profitable for them. It's a lot of expenditure on resources, as well as wage, right? So how much it costs to pay a UPS or FedEx driver to drive into the city, as well as how much gas is being used and how much, how long the route is going to be for them. Their resource and the resources can be better utilized somewhere else rather than to go directly into the city to deliver one package when they can just hand that off to USPS, which is United States Postal Service, and then they can do all the processing of that parcel and they'll deliver it on their route because it's a lot cheaper and a lot more affordable. In this aspect of Hyperledger Avalon, it's the same exact thing. Take some of the components and data that's on blockchain currently, hand it off to Avalon. Avalon will do a lot of the trusted computing while maintaining the integrity, but increasing the performance on the blockchain itself. So that's where we are with this, and that's why this is it's an interesting project. We talk about blockchain a lot because blockchain is actually important as a digital, as a piece of infrastructure, digital infrastructure, because it's a part of digital transformation. We read an article about 2 weeks ago that said that blockchain maturation will hit by late 2020. So that means that many companies, if not 50% of your companies by 2022, will have some form of blockchain implementation within their organization. So we see this sort of spur happening right now. Right now, I think like maybe 10% of organizations right now that are publicly traded actually utilize blockchain because it's still a little bit early. But at the pace that it's moving, especially with things like Hyperledger, you're starting to see a lot more adoption, and you're going to see an explosion of projects come out of the blockchain community that's going to allow organizations to take advantage of it, which means that there's going to be a need for skill sets within blockchain. And if you don't have that skill set, then what's going to happen is you're going to get left behind. This is the new the new buzz term, or the new buzzword within IT right now. Everybody wants to get on blockchain, just like before everyone talked about cloud maybe 10 years ago. Amazon was the first one out the gate, and then everybody else followed. Right now, you're seeing Bitcoin was the real driver behind blockchain. Now you're starting to see everybody is getting on board with this from a open source standpoint, and from a private project standpoint. Different companies, different countries are adopting policies to that revolve around the technology itself. So now you have to get on board with this. This will be no different than understanding database development, network engineering, network security. All of this is going to be encompassed into blockchain and future projects. So as it becomes mainstream, you're going to have to adopt this sort of skill set. And if you don't have this sort of skill set or some form of literacy, you're going to get left behind really quickly. So that's that. Hey, what's going on, MOT? What's going on, Johnny Blaze? What's going on, DE Raptor? Mega Montana. All right, let me get to the next item on the docket. This one is from Forbes.com. Studying STEM isn't the career boost we think. This should be interesting. For some understandable yet deeply misguided reasons, a defining majority of our country's discourse has focused on the financial outcomes of college, the blindingly narrow return on investment. Reducing college to dollars and cents is a way to measure the impact of college, but it's an awful one. Unfortunately, that single metric has led higher education into some awful places, such as believing that college tuition is too high, that student debt is crushing, or worse of all, that going to college is no longer a good investment. It's worth repeating that getting a college degree is likely the single best investment you can make, even if you take out loans to get it. The return on investment paradigm has also led us into some dark policy concerns or corners, such nudging students into STEM studies in away from liberal arts. And a step further, offering college funding agreements that make it more expensive to study subjects like history and writing than subjects such as engineering or computers. Behind policies and practices such as those is the presumption that people who get degrees in hard STEM subjects get better jobs and make more money than those who earn degrees in other things, the engineering major versus the philosophy major, for example. Again, that's based on that's based only on money, what you get in your bank account in exchange for your investments of time and money. But here's the important part. That's not entirely true. Turns out getting a STEM education may help you get a good job early, but if you want a good career, you're better off in liberal arts lane. In other words, even if you're measuring, even if you're only measuring money, a liberal arts education is probably worth a ton more than most people may think. A, at a basic level, those of us in the liberal arts, our cheerleading squad, always knew the financial rewards available by studying English and history in arts were hefty. Many of us just rejected the measurement, refusing to put a crass calculator to the power of enlightenment. A recent piece by David Deming in the New York Times, "In the Salary Race, Engineers Sprint, but English Majors Endure," lays out the financial case. Frankly, I wish I had written it, and it should absolutely be required reading for every college-bound high school student and every high school and college counselor. Deming's findings, based on data from the census and other resources, paints the clear picture that graduates with skills-centered degrees, STEM-type degrees, get jobs with good earnings right out of the gate. But by the time college graduates enter their peak earning years, liberal arts learners have caught up and passed them. According to the data relayed by Deming, by age 40, male STEM type graduates pulled in an average of $124,458. At that age, social science and history majors earned $131,154. Even the average college graduate in any subject made nearly $112,000 at age 40, eliminating just about all of whatever financial boost STEM graduates earned right away. That the trend was similar for female graduates, and significantly, by the time STEM degree holders reach 40 years of age, more than half of them aren't in STEM jobs anymore. In addition, as workers age and their salaries and jobs responsibilities grow, they tend to transition into management. Just page is lost real quick. Transition into management and leadership roles, those jobs are more likely to require tools such as communication, empathy, and abstract creative problem solving, skills picked up by studying arts and letters. Underscoring that point is that STEM skills often require updating and getting more knowledge throughout a career. What a computer science graduate may have learned when they earned their degree, say 25 years ago, is probably largely outdated and irrelevant now. To keep their jobs, they have to go back to school frequently. Not only does that reality mean that STEM practitioners will have to spend more over their careers to keep up, it puts pressure on employers. Just as wages are expected to grow due to age and experience, employers face an economic choice. Pay someone in mid-career more or pay someone younger and less expensive. If both have just learned the same new skills, it's a decision likely to cut against STEM degree earners as they advance, depressing their career-long earnings. Put it this way, the more that technologies change the job market, the better it will be to have a degree in a non-technology, non-science field. Liberal arts skills last longer and are more likely to remain relevant in 20 to 30 years. If you're determined to measure college base only on the money it delivers, it's important to be clear that even then, studying STEM and technology may not provide the return we think, especially long term. I have to disagree with this bullshit. And I mean that in jest. What you have here is someone who doesn't understand the fundamentals of a STEM-based society. We see that China is ramping up all types of technological endeavors, including ousting and besting that of the United States in most Western countries. And yet this guy seems to think that having a liberal arts degree is going to do that. I can almost guarantee you right now, the people who are working on Huawei, who work for Huawei, do not have liberal arts degrees. In fact, most of the Chinese leadership have some form of STEM background, including the current president, Xi Jinping, who has an engineering background. He's a graduate in electrical engineering. So what you see, I think he has a background in mechanical engineering, if I remember correctly, but it might be electrical too. But the point of the matter is, he has a background in STEM. Most of the Chinese delegation has a background in STEM. Most of your functional authoritarian societies has a very technocratic leadership, including that of Singapore. Singapore is a technocratic society. There are no liberal arts majors there. If you don't have the ability to reverse engineer something or even come up with a complex design, shout out to complex, your society is not going to advance. It can't progress because, okay, you have someone who has a liberal arts degree who learned music and history, or who studied African studies. So what? You have a country that is on the brink of dying of thirst because they can't pump water out the ground, or they're having a drought, or they're having a famine because they can't irrigate their crops. How does having a liberal arts degree help you in that way? STEM graduates are going to come in there and figure it out, and we see them doing it every single day. If you pay attention to Black Brain Trust, Space and Technology, you'll see that we've covered hundreds of articles that actually focuses on this. And most of these people have STEM backgrounds. Apple was not designed by liberal arts majors. You had a computer science major such as Steve Jobs, and you had a electrical engineer such as Steve Wozniak, the Woz. You think that liberal arts drove Apple? You're a fool. Hey, what's going on, Gabe? What's going on, Complex?
Hey, what's up, man? Yeah, I'm in absolutely agreement with that. I mean, I I can't even necessarily. I agree with one of his points that a lot of times individuals who might start off in STEM, as they progress in their career, they do move more into that management and supervisory roles, where sometimes they aren't really doing technical or STEM type of roles. I think that's the only point I agree with from the whole entire article. I mean, I'm not exactly sure where he's even getting these particular numbers. I mean, that over 40 individuals, are these like liberal arts tenured professionals? Professors in universities. I don't. I've never seen those numbers. I've never seen those numbers as it concerns liberal arts and some of the soft sciences earnings after 40. Like, come on. Like, I don't know where he's going with this. And
Most of the No, I was just gonna say most of the people that are unemployed that I see have liberal arts backgrounds.
facts,
People
facts.
working at Starbucks as baristas, had a degree in women's gender studies.
Not sure where he's getting that from. And even as it concerns the emerging technologies, the largest industries, the largest organizations these days are those with that of individuals, just as you mentioned, have STEM backgrounds, and they are helping to progress everything we do, from DoorDash to Airbnb to Uber. All these technologies come from individuals with STEM backgrounds, and they're developing these things, and we're greater and greater adopting these things in everyday life. So I'm not exactly sure where his predictions are coming from, as it concerns like if it's just talking. I'm not exactly sure where he's coming from. I think it's crap too.
Yeah. What's going on, Complex? I think Complex might be having some mic issues.
I'm having mic issues right now, dude.
Yeah.
I'm having
All right.
mic issues.
All right. You can call in from the landline number. You would actually get a better connection that way. Let me send you the number.
I mean, I would like to say that those majors are needed in some capacity. I mean, I'm not saying that they should just be completely eliminated from our job force and job market, but I think a lot of those individuals go into it expecting like, hey, the salaries are not going to be where I desire to be. And I think a lot of those people need to chuck it up to like, hey, this is what I love, and my salary might not be commensurate to what I love, and that's okay with me. Like, I think that should be more of the perspective rather than, hey, we can keep up with the STEM majors. And, like, come on, yo, like, stop it.
Yeah, see, this is a war on technocrats, because that's what STEM graduates eventually will become are your technocrats. And what they want to do is maintain liberal arts as much as possible. What they haven't really figured out is that liberal arts majors have not really advanced your society technologically. And because of that, they feel that STEM in grade school, K through 12, has basically usurped all of your liberal arts ideals. All of these things that they came up with in the 1970s. During the feminist movement, the height of the feminist movement, are being reversed because of STEM. And now the new initiative is we need to get more women into STEM. But if women aren't enrolling into STEM on their own, what does that tell you? They're not really interested.
They're just not interested.
Yeah, they're not interested in that. And so because of that, many universities have stopped funding liberal arts programs because they needed to adopt more STEM programs, because a lot of the federal budget isn't
funding.
The funding isn't coming to them anymore, because who wants to fund a university or a state school that basically pumps out more more happy feel good people. I've yet to meet anybody in information technology that did not have some form of vast STEM level of education, whether it was a boot camp or it was some form of undergrad. I haven't seen it. Yeah, anti-gravity's right. Bashar al-Assad of Syria is a PhD graduate in optometry. So even though he runs his country, being a ophthalmologist, or whatever you want to call it, optometrist, he runs a country, but at the same time, he still has a STEM background. He's no idiot. If you listen to him talk, he's a very patient person, has a vast understanding of the world and how to deal with people, mostly because he has to have a level of patience. If you think about Germany is run by a lot of technocrats for all intents and purposes, which is why they're so fundamentally more advanced in the auto industry.
Oh man, yep.
With their Volkswagens, their BMWs, and Mercedes, and Americans are so far behind them in terms of development. Mostly because you have guys like this pushing that narrative that
I mean, I think it's even wild how. What was I going to say? I completely forgot my train of thought.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, can you guys hear me okay now?
Yeah, you're clear.
All right, cool.
All right, if you have anything you want to add, go ahead.
I mean, it was kind of going in and out there. I don't know if it's just like Zoom and Android or what. I'm not sure, but it seems like when I do the call-in number, everything's okay. But when I use the other, like the app or something, it's so weird.
Yeah, the app is is performance driven. So the more powerful your phone is, the better connection you're gonna get.
Yeah, I mean, this is like an old Android, dude. I'm thinking about getting a new phone today. I might go after my daughter's cheerleading practice. But it was kind of in and out, so I don't really have anything on this piece.
All right.
Yeah, I was gonna say one more thing. I found that point was the fact that the way that people interact these days is very much so primarily through digital spaces. And it just makes a lot of sense that those who are leaders, those who are individuals who are, again, just leading out the way in this current age, have an understanding and a background in, I guess, the areas in which people are communicating heavily. Like, it just makes sense. It just makes sense. But yeah, I don't know. Liberal arts over everything else. I'm not. Because those are the first people to go. The music teachers, the liberal arts teachers, and yeah, we do need art, but we also have a society that needs to continuously progress.
But I think there's a way to.
I think. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
But I think there's a way to integrate art into STEM, right? There's some areas of electives.
They already did, right?
They
STEAM,
did.
Right?
It's called STEAM now. It's called STEAM.
Yep.
Well,
they already did.
That's the arts part, right? But what I'm saying from just a STEM part, there's nothing saying that you can't have history and things of that nature, liberal classes in there. I mean, you get 2 or 3 liberal classes in there. What's wrong with that? But if you're telling me that we need more liberal arts graduates, you have to prove a case to me that liberal arts graduates are actually contributing to society in the way that STEM graduates are.
You need more liberal arts graduates to prop up the falling college attendance rates. That's really what this is. It sounds like a bit of, now that I really think about it, when I was listening, it sounded kind of like a fluff piece in a lot of ways. See, because a lot of STEM-based fields, like a lot of them are starting to really just require high specialization.
Yeah.
Okay, where like nano and micro degrees and certifications and stuff are pretty much all you need. So it kind of negates the need for college, and we're really starting to see that now with the college attendance rates drop. So I don't know. That to me just kind of sounded like. Sorry, somebody took my microphone. To me, it sounded kind of like a fluff piece to kind of talk up the idea of a liberal arts degree. Like, they're literally, really, when you objectively look at it, there is like no use for a liberal arts degree at this particular point. Like, can you think of one? Even tasks that a liberal arts degree would get you in terms of like employment are being automated and shit.
Well, they need more. You need more liberals, I guess. That's the only thing I could think of. You need more liberals. I don't know if I don't know if the U.S. military needs more liberals in their organization. More gender studies, transgenderism, and things of that nature. I don't know where it's applicable. Why there's such a protest out here. You see people, and the thing is, you can have an undergrad in liberal arts, and that's good enough to apply for a job now, because you can say, oh, well, it must have a bachelor's degree, right? Yeah. And as this person who went to school for something non-essential is being complex. You have to mute yourself, bro.
I am muted.
We can still hear you.
Is somebody else on?
I think it's DE Raptor.
Yeah, I'm on.
I have to mute him.
Yo, what's going on, D?
Yeah, I have to mute him. I think what's happening here is that people are trying to sneak by in this sort of environment, this society that says must have bachelor's degree. Oh, well, I won't. STEM is a little too complicated for me. Computer science is too complicated for me. So let me go and get a bachelor's degree in a BS and BS, right? And they'll have a BS and BS, and they'll just kind of squeeze into that crowd. Who, to me, you get a liberal arts degree when you don't know what you really want to do with your life or your career.
Like a general studies type of thing.
Yeah. I met somebody recently.
It's a degree to get just to say you have a degree.
Yeah. I met somebody recently who graduated from Harvard, man, and she has a degree from Harvard in musical therapy. So now she can walk around with the nice hoodies and sweatshirts and alumni license plate plaques that says, graduate from Harvard and something like that. And you really just don't really have anything to contribute. You just kind of
She's qualified to run a yoga. She's qualified to run a yoga studio.
Yeah, and the thing is, the degree was free, so she gets in as a minority, and she can tote around, the Harvard banner, and the fact that she has a bachelor's degree, and now she can, fit in with the brain trust, and it's like, no, that's not exactly what we do over here.
From what I can see, this guy is just trying to, like what Complex just said. There's been liberal arts degree majors have been decreasing throughout the years, and the coming, I don't know, next 20, 30 years is basically a STEM required field. Almost every field is a STEM requirement now, because the fields that were liberal arts are going to be taken over by computer learning, and the job, you need a lot of interdisciplinary, like if you're going to be an accountant, you can do a liberal arts with a lot of accounting, but nowadays accounting is being taken over by computers. So what do? You know what I'm saying? You got to train for that computer field that you're going to go into, even though you're going to be doing accounting. And this guy seems to be trying to plug college, people going to college to get into liberal arts, because so that the liberal arts wouldn't decline when compared to the STEM fields. Wouldn't keep declining.
When you really think about it, this type of thing really like kind of points to the notion of the idea that like all colleges essentially are going to have to become like science oriented. Unless the colleges are like sort of like they're theological schools. But I can't really see. I can't see like a practical like use for like a liberal arts college nowadays, right? Every sort of institution, I think, like what Mike and DE and Gabe said, is going to have to kind of merge with STEM to be relevant.
Well, I think Anti-Gravity in the chat says liberal arts education is definitely important to integrate into STEM. Some of these guys are not well-rounded. They might end up creating Terminator AI with their recklessness. So I've heard this sort of thing, sort of statement made before by other people that STEM graduates lack ethical thinking or ethical principles. And what's happening here is that somehow they're just kind of like they'll write bad code that affects people, that has an impact on people without taking into consideration the impact itself, because they lack this sort of liberal arts understanding or liberal understanding, and that could be far from the truth, right? You already have policies in place that guide your ethical designs. Basically, you have NIST guidelines. This is how things should work from a cybersecurity standpoint. This is how things should work from a risk management standpoint. You have electrical wiring code, right? That goes back to the early 1900s. So there's already structures in place and mechanisms in place to manage the ethics portion of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I think there's this idea, there's this belief that somehow, some way, if you go take a few of these classes, you would have a better understanding of the world. And it's like, wait a second, I have access to the world from the palm of my hands. Why do I need to spend $2,300 on a class that's where I can just sit there and learn about gender? Yeah, if I want to learn about gender, I just go to Pornhub.com. But that's a whole nother.
Right.
Let me sit down, put my do rag on my head.
You know,
Wait, what? Oh, yo.
hashtag
Oh.
Gabe got hands.
Oh my gosh, here we go.
uh-huh.
STEM. No.
All right, let me get to this next article, man. This one's from arstechnica.com. The internet's horrifying new method for installing Google apps on Huawei phones. As you probably know, the Trump administration banned US companies from doing business with Huawei several months ago. Recently, Huawei had a big smartphone launch, the Mate 30 Pro, the first Huawei phone to launch without Google apps, thanks to the export ban. The lack of ecosystem and without killer Google apps like Play Store, Gmail, Google Maps, YouTube, Chrome, and Google Assistant, and more. The internet, as it is wont to do. What? Who wrote this thing? Has been coming up with workarounds to fix this problem to get Google Apps on the Mate 30 Pro. The gray market distribution of Google Apps is something the Android modding scene has down to a science. And it's fairly easy to get Google Apps on things that don't normally come with Google Apps, like Amazon Kindle Fire devices, custom ROMs based on the open source Android code, like Lineage OS, and on imported devices meant for Google free Chinese market. Unfortunately, none of these methods works on the Mate 30 Pro. They rely on either an unlocked bootloader, which allows users to flash Google apps to the normally read-only system partition, or they rely on stub apps left in the system partition by the device manufacturer specifically for the Google apps. So side-loaded versions can get them system-level permissions they need to work. The Mate 30 doesn't allow for either method. With all the traditional techniques out the window, the internet's brand new method for getting Google apps onto the Mate 30 is through a website called lazyplay.net. You can now see news articles promoting this site from just about all the major Android news sites. I Googled Mate 30 Pro install Play Store, and literally every result on the first page recommended lzplay.net. It's easy to see why LZ Play is ubiquitous. Go to the website, install the app, mash next a few times, and boom, Google Apps are on your Huawei device. It seemingly installs 6 system apps in the blink of an eye with almost no user interaction. Even though the Google app should not be able to get the system level permissions they need to work, they somehow do. Thanks to this app, it's like magic. LZ Play is fast, it's easy, and as far as getting Google apps onto your the Huawei device, it works. It's also the biggest Android modern security nightmare I've ever seen. And no, that's not hyperbole. lzplay.net plugs into Android's mobile device management (MDM) API, which is meant for enterprise services like Android for Work or your company's IT department. This is a remote management API that is meant to give your IT department full control over your company's issued device. The goal is to allow your IT department to have basically as much control over the device remotely as you have in front of it, allowing them to silently install and uninstall apps, change the lock screen password, remote wipe device, and do a million other things. Watch any of the video guides after the app download, and you'll see the activate device administrator screen pop up, complete with the huge scrolling list that spells out all the scary permissions. At this point, you should really stop and think if granting these permissions to an unknown entity is a good idea. It's totally not. The set of permissions which is used to be called device owners should only ever be given to an entity you 100% trust. Apps like Google's Android for Work, an app from your company's MDM provider for your company issued phone, or maybe you have an Android powered kiosk or IoT device that you personally want to manage remotely. Those options are fine. What's not fine is granting these permissions to random websites like lzplay.net. Nobody knows who or what what owns lzplay.net, and therefore nobody knows if the site is trustworthy or what they want out of all of this. With no copyright notice or any kind of ownership claim on the website, there's not much digging that can be done. A Whois lookup shows the site is hosted in mainland China and was created just 3 months ago. And neither of those facts inspires much confidence. This is very interesting. This is very interesting. From a security standpoint, I agree with them. If the phone is just for just for fun, then I guess you're not putting any sensitive information on it. That might be fine. But you're talking about using this as your daily driver for a phone. I would be highly suspicious of installing this sort of platform. I have probably about 24 apps on my phone that I need to use, but I don't use every single day. I could probably get by without them. I probably use them maybe once every 2 weeks at most. I only use about 5 apps outside of Google apps that are necessary for my functionality for my daily driving device or daily driven device. So I'm curious to know, how many apps do you have on your phone, Gabe?
Wait, the
Yeah, I think
get Gabe.
I think his do-rag might be too tight. You got any?
Oh, shoot.
Whoa. Hold on. No, I've been kind of away a little bit. I'm going to pass on this one, so I'll be back to that.
All right. Complex, you have any, how many apps do you have on your phone that you use?
That I use? Not that many. Maybe like 4 or 5. Yeah, maybe like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
That I use regularly. Yeah.
Yeah, I have about that as well. If I exclude Google apps, YouTube, Gmail, the normal Google Waze, things like that. If I exclude those, I probably have about less than 5 apps, maybe 5 apps at best, that I probably check on a daily basis, right? So I might check LinkedIn, I might check IG, I might check NFL or the NBA app. I might check let me see, let me go top of my apps. Yeah, my banking apps, right? So my banking apps are important because I need to verify purchases and whatnot. But outside of that, I really don't have. Let me see. I have 5. So I have about 50 apps on my phone that I don't actually use on a daily basis. I use it maybe once a month, maybe once a year at best.
Right.
I have Microsoft Office. I have Microsoft Office now because it's the license is transferable from Windows to Android. But outside of that, I really don't use a whole lot of apps. I can probably get by without them.
Yeah, I have like so like I still have my Bird contract. So that app I use, that's probably like one of the most used apps. That, the YouTube app, Netflix, and then like so for example, like there's a dude who's selling a cart chassis on like OfferUp right now. So he and I have been going back and forth, just talking about price and whatnot. So I'm on OfferUp. If I find like carts to snatch up and mod up and sell, so I'm looking at that. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I don't really use a lot of apps outside of, like you said, the Google Suite. Outside of that stuff, yeah, it's maybe like 4 or 5 apps.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So you were asking how many apps do I use on my phone, or?
Yes.
Yeah, I got Apple. So let me see. Nothing.
You know what they say about guys who use Apple?
They're great.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I use some. I got some banking stuff on here. I've got social media, of course. Some some authenticator apps, like the Authenticator and the Duo app. The
the video chat app.
Yeah, I got
Duo?
Zoom on here. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
Duo as in the Duo security. So you're able to generate like one-time passcodes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I use Google Authenticator as well.
Yep. So I use Authenticator, but I also got Duo too.
Yeah.
But then I have some networking apps too. But yeah, I would say it's sensitive. If somebody got my apps, they'd probably find out a lot about me. So yeah, this.
What I'm thinking here is, is Huawei completely dependent upon Google? And based on the kind of conversation that we're having right now, I don't think that they're really all that dependent upon them. I think they can get by just fine without them. If anyone, because factor in that China has 1 billion people in it, man. And,
that's a large market.
Yeah, they can create their own market that would actually push Google to the side, and they can develop their own ecosystem. And
that's big, right? Everybody. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, do you think, like, just listening to that article, do you think that this is really maybe some sort of like slick way of capturing Google user data?
Maybe. Maybe. I mean, I'm pretty sure they already have it since they've already developed off of it, right? They spent quite a. They're one of the bigger contributors to the Google ecosystem, anyways. I think that.
I mean, because of the type of access to the data on the phone, the permissions that you got to give it, it's like, yo.
Well, they already have that, right? If you're Huawei, if you're the Chinese government, you already have access to all your citizens' data. So that's
but what I'm talking about is like Google user data, because like, okay, if you're the assumption here, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but like, okay, so if you're accessing like Google Maps through this website or something like that, right? I'm assuming that you also might be signed in to your Google account.
Well, if you're buying a Huawei, if you're using a Huawei phone, it's because you already made the purchase, and you're probably already willingly giving your information to the Chinese government, anyways, right? If you use WeChat, if you use WeChat, then you already done so.
You're definitely doing it,
right? So I think that part may have been plausible at one point, but because Huawei is so large and it has so many devices on the market that they flooded, they've already captured more than enough user data to kind of get enough information, right? So we saw this recently with Hong Kong, right? So the Hong Kong protesters,
the protesters,
right? The terrorists, in my opinion, they've already captured that information off of those Hong Kong individuals. Those group of people, that demographic. So if the Chinese government so enthusiastically wants to get it, then they'll go ahead and get it. We know that Israel has cracked Apple's security framework in order to capture user data and behavior. Right. And yet Gabe still wants to use one. So, kudos to him.
I mean, I can send you a text message right now and pretty much just own your Android phone. So, it's
oh, really?
Calm down.
Well, I have a Nokia candy bar phone, so I don't have to worry about that.
Right. An SMS text message.
Yeah, he's got one. He's got one of those old Nokia brick phones. That's 5G capable.
Yeah, with bubble breaker. Yeah, let me get to this next article from fastcompany.com. Cheap smartphones have a disturbing secret. $17 for a smartphone sounds like a great deal, especially for people living in poverty who can barely afford rent. But there's a problem. Low-cost smartphones are privacy nightmares. According to an analysis by the advocacy group Privacy International, a $17 Android phone called My A2 My Phone, which was launched in December 2017, has hosts of privacy problems that makes its owner vulnerable to hackers and to data-hungry tech companies. First, it comes with an outdated version of Android with known security vulnerabilities that can't be updated or patched. The My A2 also has apps that can't be updated or deleted. and those apps contain multiple security and privacy flaws. One of those pre-installed apps that can't be removed, Facebook Lite, gets default permission to track everywhere you go, upload all your contacts, and read your phone's calendar. The fact that Facebook Lite can't be removed is especially worrying because the app suffered a major privacy snafu earlier this year when hundreds of millions of Facebook Lite users had their passwords exposed. Facebook did not respond to requests for a comment. No shit. Philippines-based MyPhone said the specs of the My A2 limited it to shipping the phone with Android 6.0, and since then it says it has lost access and support to update the apps we have pre-installed with the device. Given that the My A2 phone, like many low-cost Android smartphones, runs outdated versions of Android OS and can't be updated due to their hardware limitations, users of such phones are limited to relatively light privacy protections compared to what modern OSs like Android 10 offer today. The My A2 is just one example of how cheap smartphones leak personal information, provided few, if any, privacy protections, and are incredibly easy to hack compared to their more expensive counterparts. Yet millions of Americans who can't afford to buy a computer or install broadband internet at home often have no choice but to use such devices, which become their sole means of accessing the internet. If they want to enjoy the basic conveniences that people in higher socioeconomic tiers have, such as transportation, directions, online bill pay, and email, they may have to give up their privacy in exchange. Last month, researchers Jan Fernbach and Gwen Schaefer from the Media Inequality and Change Center, MIC, a joint venture between the University of Pennsylvania and Rutgers University, published a study based on focus groups with 79 Americans who rely primarily on their phones to get online. What they found was disturbing. Nearly all study participants shared stories of relinquishing their data privacy, which we consider to be a basic civil right, in exchange for the ability to access online services and platforms. The researchers write. Researchers refer to this group of people of about 1 in 5 American adults today, according to data from Pew Research, as smartphone-only internet users. In the United States, these users are mainly made up of economically disadvantaged individuals who are disproportionately Black and Hispanic. But this is a global problem as well. The World Advertising Research Center says that as of this year, 2 billion people globally currently access the internet via only their smartphones, or 51% of total internet users. That number is on track to skyrocket in the next 5 years. By 2025, World Advertising Research Center, WARC, estimates that 3.7 billion people, or over 72% of projected internet users, will be smartphone-only internet users. It's not just the apps and operating system on low-cost smartphones like My A2 MyPhone that are the problem. As the MIC Center's white paper shows, the very nature of the smartphone leaves users more vulnerable than personal computers do. Compared to desktop computers, smartphones collect much more data about a user, including health data and real-time geolocation data, and this information is often sent to outside parties like Facebook and data brokers. This means, for example, that external actors could use data about how often you've been in church to infer how religious you are, or they could analyze leaked women's menstrual data to determine if they are pregnant. On top of this, some nation states can and often do work hand in hand with cellular service providers to help access this data, which allows Orwellian leaning governments to track entire groups of people. Further, many smartphones also do not have basic protections like firewalls that come with computers. Security patches are often slow to arrive on low-cost phones, or are never patched at all. While most personal computers can be hacked over a Wi-Fi connection, smartphones have many more vectors of attack, including over cellular and Bluetooth connections. Because they aren't turned off or put to sleep at night like computers often are, smartphones also generally send and collect data 24 hours a day. This means the data they leak, either voluntarily or through security vulnerabilities, flow around the clock. Just one such example, by default, many apps on the low-cost Android smartphones have access to your location 24 hours a day, meaning companies can infer where you sleep by simply seeing when your phone's location stops moving for the day. To be clear, it's possible to be an online-only smartphone user and still retain a relatively high degree of privacy. Getting an iPhone, even an older, used one, is one way to do this. However, economically disadvantaged people can't afford a luxury like high-end iPhone or an Android flagship with better privacy protections. As a result, tens of millions of Americans and billions of other people across the world have little choice but to sacrifice their privacy and security if they want to get online, which is a virtual necessity in today's world. As Pew has pointed out, the internet is essentially is an essential resource for job seekers. When was the last time you saw a job posted in the help wanted section of a newspaper before being posted on LinkedIn or Monster.com? Yet people in lower socioeconomic tiers are condemned to having less privacy than their wealthier counterparts if they want to access the same essential resources simply because of the devices they are able to afford. Some focus group participants reported that in an effort to maintain data privacy, they modify online activities in ways that harm personal relationships and force them to forego job opportunities. Write the MIC report authors Jan Fernbeck and Gwen Schaefer. There's only one way to effectively protect the privacy of everyone who goes online, regardless of their devices they are using. Comprehensive regulation to protect people's privacy. While companies like Apple are to be lauded for prioritizing privacy protections, people around the world should not be relying on tech giants building privacy safeguards for only a population that can afford it. The government should also proactively take up the cajoles on behalf of its citizens, most of whom find themselves beholden to the whims of big businesses, said Jam Jacobs, a privacy advocate at the Foundation for Media Alternatives. In a response to Privacy International's report, regulators cannot expect the private sector to get things right all on their own. That would be a sure recipe for failure and an abandonment of their clear mandate as public servants. I'm not gonna read this whole thing, but I think I agree with this wholeheartedly. In the United States, we have the Fourth Amendment, which is the right to privacy. So, and you have state laws such as MDPR, which is Massachusetts Data Protection Regulation, and CDPR, which is California Data Protection Regulation. In New York's and NYPDR, which is New York Data Protection and Regulation, and so as New Jersey as well. These phones being sold completely violate all of these regulatory standards and the constitutional rights of Americans. So I'm not sure how they're able to sell these devices and get away with it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because if Equifax is being held to this standard, and if Yahoo is being held to this standard when they lose their data due to a breach, why are these phone companies and these phone manufacturers allowed to sell these same devices that leak private information, or PII? It just seems really strange. What is your take on this, Mr. Gabe? Oh, Gabe is gone. All right. Maybe we can go to
Right. I want to
D
say
after.
something. A lot of places where these phones are sold, except for say the U.S. and maybe Europe, even some places in Europe, they don't have the same standards of privacy as say in the U.S. In say in Africa, for example, you just want a phone to talk to your friend or text your friend or whatever the case might be. The same thing in Asia. I mean, you grow up in China, you grow up with the idea that the police gonna know everything about you. Um, there's somebody in your neighborhood that knows when your wife is pregnant, you know, and that's from the time they are children. You know, they know what school you go to. You can't you don't have many private thoughts, you know. So you grow up with this um, um, built-in assumption that there's nothing really that you can hide from the government, or and you hear people say it. People say, "I don't have anything to hide, so why should I be worried about something like that?" You know what I'm saying? So these phones are, well, to us it might be saying, "Wow, wow, why would people do something like that?" To them, it's just a phone, and that's the way they lived all their life.
Mhm. Well, the thing is that in America, you have these constitutional rights and these laws, and these companies are still allowed to sell their devices here, despite the fact that they're leaking all types of data, which is something I'm surprised that the government has not looked into, um, because even the government sells these sort of quote unquote Obama phones that are doing the same exact thing, right? Um, I think that's something that should be brought up. You know, at least I'll probably bring it up the next time I interface with politicians, because I think putting pressure on these foreign companies designing these cheap phones, and I've had a couple of tablets that have the same issue. Um, they have an operating system that's outdated. They have no way of being updated, and the apps on there are kind of junk, and they require you to input some form of person identifiable information. So how are these devices able to get into the United States? How are they able to be sold with this sort of with these sort of flaws, right? And these aren't like little flaws, right? It's not like the screen cracked or something like that and it was a recall. No, there's very sensitive information being leaked out. Um, being leaked out by these hardware devices, and no one's questioning it. And the article points out that black people are more likely to be using these sort of devices. Man, that really um, concerns me at least. But it should be another um, asterisk to ADOS, that there is still a digital divide, right? You still have digital colonialism, where you have poor people being colonized by tech companies for their data, and the same thing is happening in Africa and Latin America. So this is something that should be fundamentally on the talking point, on the chopping block right now.
Well, but most black people are interested in that either. You know, the idea that they should have to do something, or even Caucasian at work. When when they find an app, suppose Caucasian download an app
Hmm.
from Google, and this thing has a flaw. When they find out about it, they're like, wow, it's like this is new to me. How
Hmm.
could this happen to me?
Hmm.
Not not thinking that these things happen all the time. You have to be aware of it, and you have to keep yourself in a safe place. You know what I'm saying? You got to make sure that you don't have these things on your phone. Try your best not to download them yourself. And that's the average person, on the street does that. I mean, we we are subject to this. The government will protect us at any cost. Thing. It doesn't happen, but we
Yeah.
still feel like we are cursed when it doesn't happen. We know that the government is not going to do it, but still we pretend that we want that it's supposed to happen.
Well, they went after a few companies, right? I mean, we know it went after major institutions and corporations for losing their data, losing sensitive data. So we know that they have the controls and mechanisms in place to actually enact on something like this. So it's just a matter of bringing attention to it. That's something I'll probably do another presentation on, because I think it is very important. But let me get to this next article. All right, this one is from Gizmodo.com. All right, this self-driving garbage can remembers to take the trash to the curb for you. Despite what the inventors of the world want you to believe, not everything in your home needs to be intelligent, automated, and motorized, except your garbage cans. The inventor of the smart can wants to ensure you'll never again forget it's trash day, because these cans can automatically drive themselves to the curb for you. This is innovation the world needs. Invented by Andrew Murray and currently in development at the company he founded, Resi, the Smart Can is one of those rare home-focused robots that could, like RoboVax, actually deliver some genuinely useful functionality, not just questionable uses like entertainment and companionship. Those of us tasked with dragging our garbage cans to the curb every week will immediately see the benefits of an automation like this. Using a companion, the Smart Can will follow a pre-programmed schedule and automatically drive itself to the curbside drop-off point for garbage pickup days, and then autonomously return to wherever you keep them parked for the rest of the week. Smart Cans appear to rely on a pair of docking stations for navigation, which could be problematic for those who live in areas where the city simply won't let them install one on a public curb, or where there's the risk of them being damaged from high foot traffic. So hopefully its creators will offer an alternative way to help them find their way. Presumably, the cans do need to be regularly recharged, which isn't a huge inconvenience if the docks are able to provide that functionality the same way they do to RoboVax. But there are other potential logistical roadblocks, including the likely need for a homeowner to remember to open the garage or a backyard gate to let the RoboCans out on trash day. And what happens when, after being emptied, one of those cans is simply tossed back on the sidewalk and left on its side, a popular pastime of many trash collectors. There's also the question of pricing, which has yet to be revealed. Plastic garbage cans, which are prone to cracking, breaking, and end up smelling very awful, are relatively cheap to replace. If the smart can ends up costing a few $100, you might find yourself caring for it more than you do your car, giving it regular baths and ensuring its path to the curb is always kept clear and tidy. It could create more work than it promises to alleviate. This is interesting. I think we should watch this a few more times so that people understand what's coming. Right. So for all these people, you know, especially the women who want to date Pookie and talk about how useful he is, he takes out the trash when I go to work. Well, guess what? This little device here is not gonna is gonna put him out of business. He won't be taking out any trash anytime soon because this trash can will do it for you. DE, you have anything you want to add to that?
I sometime within the next about 5 years or so, we're gonna have not only the garbage can taking out garbage, but the lawnmower is gonna cut your lawn automatically.
Well, they already have that. They already have
Mm.
automated lawnmowers. They already have that.
I know about the automated lawnmowers. You put it out there, but you're gonna leave the lawnmower in some place where it can exit the garage, cut the grass, because your grass might have sensors in it. Say, well, I'm high enough to be cut. The lawnmower is going to go out, cut the grass, come back and park itself. These what we used to call gadgets before are going to turn into something that everything that we have around the house is going to be automated. And people are trying their best to get in on the ground floor right now. As you see, this is like a test in the testing phase. And as you see, as they get the machine learning right, and they can get one done, then they're going to move on to every other machine that we have. Every other area of our life, you know, something is going to tell us, you know, hey, you're supposed to do this morning before you go to work. And when you come home in the evening, you know, this is what you're supposed to do. The whole life is going to be automated.
This is like a single mother's, you know, wet dream. Is to remove Pookie from the house and have the trash can do all of it, what it needs to do. You have a RoboVac. You have you know, the gutter cleaner. This is like a wet dream for a single mother, man. They even now have
self-starting dishwasher, self-cleaning oven.
I mean, obviously they have dishwashers, right? I mean, dishwashers, you can set it and forget it. Some of the new refrigerators are automated, right? It'll order new milk for you and new eggs and stuff like that. This is going to put Pookie officially out of business.
Pookie better level up.
Or tighten up his do-rag or something. This is crazy. I'm going to keep watching this for the next maybe 5 minutes or so, because people think that we're just making this stuff up. Oh, automation's not coming. Like they said over the weekend, automation's not coming. What are you talking about? Well, guess what? Your usability as a Pookie is almost null and void now, because the trash can take itself out.
You know, I'm really bothered. I'm not to digress or anything. I'm just kind of bothered by that whole sort of, we're like some sort of doomsdayers or something.
Yeah.
You know, like we're some sort of, what they say, we bring doom and gloom and all this type of shit. And it's just like, no, we're bringing awareness to the quickly unfolding technological paradigm that you find yourself in. That's all we're doing here.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing, is just bringing you awareness. These things exist. They're very real. Some of you may have jobs that may be impacted by this stuff. We're just saying.
One of the things that I don't understand about black people, our people, is that they will watch something like this, and to them it'd be something funny. You understand? They would laugh at, damn, look at that garbage can. You know, it's but they won't say to themselves, hey, you know what? If they're going to automate garbage cans, everything is going to be automated. Why don't I start thinking about what I can automate, what I could do to automate something? Can I make something like that works and people will buy it? Right. Everybody's complaining, you know, but like you were saying just now, it's complex, you know. You're scaring the people. You know,
I mean, like, seriously, it's like, You know, it's almost as if it's like we're literally just talking like some science fiction shit. Meanwhile, just a few hours ago, you were probably inside of like a McDonald's or a Jack in the Box or something, and you ordered from a huge tablet. No human interaction at all, and you somehow can't make the connection.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is that more and more is going to come out of this, man. I know they were working on a baby stroller that was automated as well. What's the other thing that we were just looking at maybe a few weeks ago? What is it now? I forget right now, man. There was another device that was automated that no one had thought about for the most part, and this is where we're going right now. It's 2019, and they're, this is just like the preliminary of it. They'll figure this out by next summer, how to really make this work. It won't be hard. I mean, they had to get the functional device up and going. I mean, that's a given, right? You're first in your testing phases of, can it actually carry its own weight? Yeah, it can, because the same sort of motor that would be used to move a elderly person in a wheelchair would actually be more than sufficient to carry trash to the curb, right? It's only moving 100 feet at best. And then it goes back and parks itself, so it's even lighter when it goes back. I think, and maybe I know, I mean, think about Nest, right? Or some of these other auto home automated home systems, right? You can, it detects when your smartphone is close, or your smartphone detects when it's close to its home, and all the lights automatically come on, and your door unlocks, and your HVAC system in the house goes cool, raises up the temperature or lowers the temperature and things of that nature. There's a whole lot of things that's coming out of all of this, and you have people tell you that this isn't true, this isn't real.
Well, I think this is just like one component. It's one component in a fully automated home environment, where everything literally can be monitored, like by your phone. If the city trash pickup schedules change, the device just updates the pickup schedules, so it changes the time that it moves out to the curb for the truck to come by and pick up and empty it.
And they already have automated street sweepers now. I don't know if you guys seen those. There's
I've seen those. I've seen it. I've already seen one of those.
Yeah. So we that's the sort of realm we're moving into. The thing about we talked about this before, that in predominantly black areas, they couldn't understand why there was so much trash on the ground. It's because there were no trash cans. So someone came up with a solution to put trash cans out there. And then the trash cans kept filling up because the city only came by once a week, and the trash filled up once a day. So they were missing out again. And then someone came up with a solution to have this solar-powered IoT-based trash can that has a scale on the inside that captures the weight of the trash that's put into the bin. And then it sends a signal out over Wi-Fi to the sanitation workers to come pick it up before the end of the day. And now they have perfected trash pickup.
But this trash can had the same capability, or has the capacity to have the same capability. Suppose you were a family of say 5 people, and your trash cans get filled up quickly, and as compared to a family of 2 people, where you don't have to put out the trash can for every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks or whatever the case might be. Your trash can will call the truck driver. He in the neighborhood. He passed by and picks up your trash. The trash can goes out, and he picks up your trash. He doesn't have to. He doesn't. Instead of coming around spending 5 hours in the neighborhood, they might spend 1 hour in the neighborhood because all the trash cans don't need to be empty. So
Yeah.
this thing has the capability of transforming trash pickup completely.
Yeah, absolutely. And You probably get a tax incentive for it, right? Imagine if you live in a condo with a dozen people, you see these trash cans is struggling down the sidewalk on their own and parking themselves. I mean, it's just it's something to be mesmerized by, because a couple years ago, no one was thinking about this. No one's thinking about their boyfriend could be replaced by some fucking robot.
Yep, but I'm telling you, everything is like before. People used to think of all kind of mechanical gadgets.
Mhm.
Like 20 years ago, people would think about all kind of mechanical gadgets to make your life better. Now they're thinking about putting um, automation, adding automation to everything that before used to be mechanical,
Mhm.
just purely mechanical.
Right, right, right. It I mean, you autonomous cars are coming. You have automated trash cans. You have automated homes. You have automated food delivery. You have all the myriad of things, and people are still telling you that this isn't happening. It's like, how much more information do we need to provide uh, before you accept this? This is amazing to me. This is the most amazing thing I've seen all week. But today's only Monday. So, all right, let me get to.
Like I said, we tend to look at things for the entertainment value only. Well, not all of us, but the majority of us. 90% of black people tend to look at things for the entertainment value
Yeah,
only.
yeah, and they had some preliminary tests of like Bird scooters or whatever scooter company it was. Um, Basically self-driving scooters. Scooter comes in and drops itself off to you or something like that. Just crazy. Just absolutely crazy. This is in 2019. They're thinking of this. Instead of hailing down a cab, you're hailing down a scooter. You see a scooter driving down the street on its own, self-balancing to come to you, and then you jump on it and you go to where you need to go. It's crazy.
Hey, I don't know. There was an article that you had on the Black Brain Trust about this bicycle that would move on its own and it didn't fall. And we were
Self
wondering what use is that going to take. Guess what? You just mentioned something. The self-balancing. This scooter is going to come to your house, pick you up. You go where you want to go. The scooter either park itself or go back to where it came from.
yeah,
So you see where you see where that automation is leading to. This is like this thing is getting more amazing day after day, day by day.
yeah. And black people are still in denial. They'll argue with you. They'll tell you that they'll kill squirrels to feed themselves. They're not a real alpha male unless you kill a pigeon and eat it. It tastes like chicken. Just crazy. Um, Let me get to this next article from fastcompany.com. You can now make money selling your own health data, but should you? Selling your own health data is completely legal if you wanted to. You could request a copy of your electronic health record from your doctor and post an ad on eBay, Craigslist, or even Facebook Marketplace. But unlike a used car or a work of art or a cherished family heirloom, your personal data isn't something of value that you give up forever once it leaves your home. It's something else entirely. It belongs to you long after you sell it, until the day you die. It's an asset that can be sold over and over without depletion until the demand diminishes. So how do you figure out what this data from every doctor, hospital, and outpatient provider you've ever visited is worth? How can you put a price on a lifetime of lab test results, diagnosis, medication lists, surgeries, radiology scans, vaccinations, allergies, and blood pressure readings, especially when combined with non-medical details like your demographic information, race, age, profession, marital status, and billing history? And what if all this data were linked to your DNA data, a uniquely sensitive and potentially precious commodity? Beyond those questions, how do you make sure that people understand the consequences of selling their data, and how it will be used by any buyer. And how do you make sure that the poor and desperate aren't exploited by the market for such data? These are all questions that remain without answers for a market that remains to be realized. But it's around the corner, and some companies and lawmakers have been busy laying the groundwork for this brave new world. One company is lobbying state legislators in Maryland and Oregon to make it easier for sellers and buyers to find each other. Humanity.co attempts to connect users of its apps to companies and organizations using a consent as a service model. That is, extracting medical information from users who consent for privacy and authorize for permitted use. Most people who have a data privacy conversation are having it either from a pro-consumer perspective or a pro-corporate perspective, says Humanity.co. CEO Richie Etwaru. Corporations give free services to consumers in exchange for monetizing their data. So if consumers don't want their data monetized, they can't have free services. The issue right now is that there's not a choice. Choice would be fantastic. Such proposals raise concerns among civil liberties advocates. Chad Marlowe, a senior advocacy and policy counsel at the ACLU, takes issue with this proposed legislation attempt to use state governments to generate a customer base for these companies, in effect, to generate leads. These companies are actually seeking a government's help in creating a market for it. And I think that's where it feels particularly different and offensive, he says. They can eject themselves into the process at a very convenient low cost stage by mandating doctors to have to tell their patients, you can sell your information, and by the way, here's how you do it, and here are the companies that will help you do it. He says the government should be empowering people to say yes or no, not create a marketplace to make it really easy to say yes. In February, California Governor Gavin Newsom announced he will look into data dividend, or AKA digital dividend plan for consumers as a payout from big tech. Your data is being monetized every single nanosecond, and to the extent it's been monetized and it's yours, I think in some way, shape, or form, you should be rewarded, Newsom told Axios in June. In January, 40 lawmakers in Oregon signed onto a bipartisan bill that would have enabled consumers to monetize their de-anonymized medical data. The Oregon bill was indeed the perfect Trojan horse for the consumer. Etwaru says, referring to an op-ed Sarah Geoing penned for the New York Times Privacy Project, it was exactly what the consumers needed, a concept that introduced contrast to the system so that lobbyists, the politicians, and the corporates can no longer hide because, yes, you own it. Ownership, by definition, without clarification, is an incomplete legal contract. You have to clarify the type of ownership we introduced for property. And it turned the lights on. And now we see who's who. And I couldn't be happier. So this is very interesting. I'm not gonna read this whole thing because I think it's kind of silly. The thing is, I can understand a person who's dead or on their deathbed should be able to sell that data, right? I think the family should be able to actually put that in their will or something like that, or you should be able to put that in your will that when I die, my information will be sold off, maybe to pay for my cremation or my burial, right? I mean, there's got to be some return on investment in that because I can't use it anymore, right? So why take it with me and have zero value? It should be actually monetized at that point to the family to pay for my services. But as a living adult, the problem is a healthy person may change to a sick person. A sick person may not have all that much control over their ability to cognitively think, to agree to yes or no. So this becomes really tricky. because now you have to change all your HIPAA laws, your HIPAA regulation to determine whether or not this information should be sold, right? So you're decentralizing the EMR or the PHI from the institutions itself, and you're putting it back into the hands of the people. Okay, you have democracy in medical data. Big whoop-de-doo, because if the data is not masked in a way to protect the patient from when they sell this data off, so that they can't be bombarded with telemarketing calls and whatnot, it's kind of more of an annoyance than anything else.
You remember a while back, pharmaceutical companies couldn't advertise their products on the TV. Now you got pharmaceutical companies sending you mail saying, hey, when you go to the doctor, can you ask for this type of medicine? Can you ask for this brand medicine? Can you ask for this name medicine by name? There are people who are going to the doctor's office and say, hey, doc, I think I have such a disease. Can you give me this medication? And this is the same. When you're reading that article, the same thought came to mind, that people are gonna be, they're not gonna be saying, you know what, this is my private information, it should never be sold. People are going to actually sell that information, especially say you're a drug addict and you need some hit. You're gonna sell your information. You're hungry, you want a pair of Jordans. People are gonna sell that information. Seriously.
No different than giving blood, right? The poor people always give blood when if the price is right. They may get, I don't know what they charge for blood anymore. Maybe at one point they was giving it away for $25 or $30 or something like that. Maybe $50 you would get for donating blood. Could be more now. But the point of the matter here is that they still monetize their bodily fluid in one way, shape, or form. No different than giving away sperm. Right? You go to a sperm bank and they give you $2,000 to black men for giving away their sperm.
Everything is going to become a commodity, Mike. Everything. I'm serious.
More like a commodity.
In the hood, it will be like that.
Oh man, let me go to this next article from Ars Technica. Europe's Mars lander parachute problems may be worse than thought. In October 2016, Europe's small Scalability lander entered the Martian atmosphere and attempted to touch down on the surface on the red planet. Due to the altitude measurement error, however, the lander's parachute system was released early and the lander crashed into Mars. Interesting. When it comes to Mars, this was just another in the long line of failures. On the 21 landers sent by humans to Mars over the last 6 decades, only 8 have successfully reached the red planet's surface and conducted science operations, all of which were built and launched by NASA. Now, the European Space Agency is trying again with its ExoMars mission due to be launched on a Proton rocket next summer. According to the space agency, the European-built Rosalind Franklin rover and the Russian-led surface platform Kusachuk are nearly complete. They are due to go down to the Martian surface in a descent module. The spacecraft has a rather complicated sequence of parachute releases to slow the lander's descent through the thin Martian atmosphere. The first pilot parachute and 15-meter main parachute are deployed while the lander is still traveling at supersonic speed. The second set of pilot and main parachutes, which are larger, are deployed at subsonic speed. This all happens rather quickly, as the entire landing sequence from entering the Martian atmosphere to touching down on the planet's surface takes just 6 minutes. The testing program has not gone particularly well, and May damage occurred to both main parachute and canopies during a high altitude drop from 29 kilometers. After assessing the problem and making the changes to the design of the parachutes in their bags, the agency conducted another high altitude test on August 5th, this time focusing solely on the larger canopy that deploys in the lower atmosphere. This test too was not successful. Despite these failures, European officials have publicly said they are pressing ahead toward a 2020 launch of the mission. It is disappointing that the precautionary design adaptations introduced following the anomalies of the last test have not helped us pass the second test successfully. But as always, we remain focused and are working to understand and correct the flaw in order to launch next year, says Francois Spoto, as ESA's ExoMars team leader, in a news release. The problem with the parachutes may be worse than has publicly been reported. However, ARS has learned of at least one other parachute failure during testing of the ExoMars lander. Moreover, the agency has yet to conduct even a single successful test of the parachute canopy that is supposed to deploy at subsonic speeds higher in the Martian atmosphere. Efforts to obtain a comment from the European Space Agency about this information or the likelihood of a slip past present 2020 launch date were unsuccessful. A spokeswoman with the European Space Agency offered to look into the matter on September 4th. There have been no further response. So this is interesting, because I would have thought with all the rocketry that Russia is involved in, the Europeans are involved in, especially the Germans, they would have figured this out. Because if you're going to land at supersonic speeds, you would need some kind of reverse thrust to actually cut those speeds in half, right? So you need some form of 4 rockets on the 4 corners of the square of the landing module to boost up at a stage rate, right? So 6 minutes means that for each, you would need at least 12 stages of rocket thrust in the opposite direction to reduce the speeds down. Because if it's coming at supersonic speeds into the atmosphere and it only has 6 minutes to land, that means your rockets have to work every 30 seconds of thrust to guide it down completely until it slows down to a considerable rate that the parachutes are enough to guide it down. I'm surprised they haven't figured this out yet.
But actually, the parachutes that they put on there are actually supposed to slow. The first 2, I think, is supposed to slow the module, and then the second 2 just bring it into land. But the thrusters would be a good thing. The other thing is the technology I mean, measuring the distance shouldn't be difficult to put on something like a rocket. You know, if you're 2 miles up, you know, you should have some kind of radar, some kind of ground-seeking radar that can tell you, you know, you're 2 miles up, you're decelerating, you're 1 mile up. You know, why doesn't the spacecraft have all of that technology on it instead of just a couple of parachutes to slow it down, and then they release another couple of parachutes that drop it into the landing zone.
That's actually a good point, because I think what you're saying is that they should use a laser guidance system to determine the distance between the surface and the atmosphere and where it belongs.
Exactly. They should have that technology on board. I mean, you have that technology on board even small airplanes now.
Right. That's a good point. That's a good point.
You know, you can land an airplane in fog. You know, the airplane can come out of the fog, and 100 feet below it, 50 feet below it is the airport runway.
Right.
Why can't you do that on Mars?
Right. That's actually a good point. I think they're probably looking at it from a cost perspective. Maybe they want to reduce the amount of sensory systems in place to less complicate the issue. That's the only thing I can think of.
But you got a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment.
Yeah.
That you want to keep running for 2 or 3 years. You got to consider that when you're going to do something. Like, how long will it take them to make a second attempt to do this now? You understand? They lost one. Now they're going to send a second one, and they're going to try to do it the second one. Suppose they lose the second one.
Right.
They could have made the initial investment. It's kind of crazy the way people think. You should have all your precautions built into this thing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Especially that kind of precaution.
Right. Right. I think there's a lot that can actually be unpacked just based on what you're saying.
It's like putting a self-driving car on the road. You're not going to put self-driving car on the road until you know that this car can operate safely. You know, it might not be 100%. You're going to have some kind of failure, but you know that 99% of the time this thing's going to operate in a safe mode. You understand? Right. It's not going to hit the car beside it. It's not going to hit the car in front of it. Because you got the equipment on there to prevent that from happening. And that's what you want to do, because this car is going to be on the road. You want this car to be on the road for, you know, how many years from now? Right. You want to keep this car for 5 years, you know, I'm going to buy the best kind of car possible. It's going to have all this, and the equipment is going to work. And besides, I'm in the car, and I want to be safe. You know what I'm saying? So you're thinking, and you have engineers building these things that seem not to be considering all this.
Right. I think what happens with a lot of these scientists and engineers, they overthink things and they overcomplicate things, and they get it wrong. And then somebody like us comes in there without that background and says, "Oh, why didn't you just do this?" And they say, "Well, we didn't think of that." Let me go to this next one from physics.org. Scientists detect the ringing of a newborn black hole for the first time. If Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity holds true, then a black hole born from cosmically quaking collisions of two massive black holes should itself ring in the aftermath, producing gravitational waves much like a struck bell reverberates sound waves. Einstein predicted that the particular pitch and decay of these gravitational waves should be a direct signature of the newly formed black hole mass and spin. Hold on 1 second.
Do we have a problem with the chat? It seems like it's not updating.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with the chat. It's been like that all night. All right, let me finish reading this. Now, physicists from MIT and elsewhere have heard the ringing of an infant black hole for the first time and found that the pattern of this ringing does, in fact, predict the black hole's mass and spin. More evidence that Einstein was right all along. The findings published today in Physical Review Letters also favor the idea that black holes lack any sort of hair, a metaphor referring to the idea that black holes, according to Einstein's theory, should exhibit just three observable properties: mass, spin, and electrical charge. All other characteristics, which the physicist John Wheeler termed hair, should be swallowed up by the black hole itself and would therefore be unobservable. The team's findings today support the idea that black holes are in fact hairless. The researchers were able to identify the pattern of a black hole's ringing and, using Einstein's equations, calculated the mass and spin that the black hole should have, given its ringing pattern. The calculations match measurements of the black hole's mass and spin made previously by others. If the team's calculation deviated significantly from the measurements, it would have suggested that the black hole's ringing encodes properties other than mass, spin, and electric charge, tantalizing evidence of physics beyond what Einstein theory can explain. But as it turns out, the black hole's ringing pattern is a direct signature of its mass and spin, giving support to the notion that black holes are bald-faced giants, lacking any extraneous hair-like properties. We all expect general relativity to be correct, but this is the first time we have confirmed it in this way, says the study's lead author Maximiliano Isi, a NASA Einstein Fellow in MIT's Kavli Institute for Astrophysics and Space Research. This is the first experimental measurement that succeeds in directly testing the no hair theorem. It doesn't mean black holes couldn't have hair. It means the picture of black holes with no hair lives for one more day. Interesting. I wonder how many times it has it's ringing. What are they doing with the captured information?
The scientific community puts out some real. Sometimes they give you some contradictory information, because at 1 minute, remember that we were talking about whether a black hole has an opening, a white hole. Remember that was like?
Well, that's just a bunch of racism.
Huh?
It was just a bunch of racism.
Well, if it's ringing or if it has a frequency, like the Earth has it has a few of them, but our galaxy, you know, each one of the planets has this signature that if you listen to it, you will hear it. It's like a earthquake. When you about to get an earthquake, the Earth starts ringing at a certain frequency. And it won't ring at that frequency if the Earth was surrounded by, say, something similar to a bag. That's the only way I can describe it for the average person. If the Earth were inside a bag, you wouldn't hear that frequency. Even if you are outside, you won't hear it. Right. The same thing with a black hole. Unless that black hole has a exit, the black hole is the entrance. If it has unless it has an exit, you shouldn't hear that ringing.
Right.
because it means that that vibration is following the black hole all throughout. That same vibration, that same frequency is like a bell. That vibration throughout the bell. Otherwise, you won't. If it's like when you ring a church bell, the frequency of the bell itself vibrates throughout the whole bell, and that's what they're saying. The black hole has this ringing. It oh man, it's kind of oh.
I wonder if they
Sometimes,
can.
sometimes I listen to these people and I say to myself, you know, they really know what they're talking about. Or they're guessing these things and just trying to
Yeah.
pretend that they know the answers. You know.
Yeah. All right. This next one is from space.com. This is China's new spacecraft to take astronauts to the moon. China is developing a next generation spacecraft for human spaceflight that would allow astronauts to travel to the moon and other deep space destinations. China became the third country to independently launch astronauts in 2003 when Yang Lui orbited Earth in the Shenzhou 5 spacecraft. And while the country plans to soon begin constructing a module of space station, China is apparently already looking beyond to eventual missions to the moon and potentially beyond. A recent promo video from the China Academy of Space Technology CAST, a state-owned spacecraft and satellite manufacturer, has given us the best look yet at the new generation crewed spacecraft, which is capable of deep space travel. Interesting. The two module spacecraft consists of a crew module and a service module, which will provide propulsion, power, and life support for the crew section. The spacecraft is up to 30 feet, 9 meters long, and has a maximum mass at liftoff of 22 tons or 20 metric tons. The crew module will be partially reusable, while the spacecraft as a whole features a module design that will allow it to be constructed to meet different mission demands. China currently uses the 8.6-ton Shenzhou spacecraft, which can carry 3 astronauts to low Earth orbit. However, Shenzhou is not designed for the harsh radiation environment of deep space, nor can it survive the high velocity re-entry into Earth's atmosphere that such missions must endure. The new spacecraft, which has not yet been named, will be capable of venturing beyond LEO and carrying 4 to 6 astronauts. In 2016, China launched a scaled boilerplate version of this crew module to test re-entry and landing. These capabilities tell us that China is committed to long-term human spaceflight at a slow but consistent pace, said Joanne Johnson-Freese, a professor in the National Security Affairs Department at the U.S. Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island. It is the opinion of Johnson-Freese that what the U.S. did as the hare, fast but sporadic, China is now doing as the tortoise, slow and methodically. Johnson-Freese also noted that the U.S. has some very exciting programs in varying stages of development and with varying levels of budget commitments, which will enable significant exploration feats if they reach fruition. NASA is developing the expendable Orion spacecraft for deep space travel with a Europe-built space service module, which will be the main crew vehicle for the Artemis lunar exploration program. Meanwhile, SpaceX is working on a Starship, a fully reusable launch system designed to help humanity colonize Mars. The new Chinese spacecraft is expected to make an unscrewed uncrewed test flight in the first half of 2020 on the first launch of the Long March 5B heavy lift rocket, according to China Manned Space Agency, CMSA. That schedule depends, however, upon the return flight of the Long March 5. Interesting that they're doing this all on their own.
The Chinese is like if you remember the Russians were in a program with the U.S. and then the U.S. jumped out of the program.
Yep.
The Chinese watch all these things, you know.
Yeah.
The Chinese watch these things carefully, and with this thing with Huawei and the 5G, they're going to be very much more careful. And the other thing is that when the U.S. launch a program, they have several. You might have Boeing working on the program, and their people in Congress have one idea of what they want to do, but there are 4 or 5 different organizations out there who want a piece of the action, and they all have 5 different ideas of what's supposed to be done on this with this thing. Whereas the Chinese says, look, we are going to do this. We're going to do this, like you said, methodically. No matter, we're going to get to where we're going. You know, we can do one experiment now, 6 months from now, the next 6 months from now, but we're going to get where we're going, and everybody's going to get there. You know what I'm saying? We all going the same direction. Whereas in America, it's not like that because of the capitalist idea that everybody wants to make some money out of the action. China goes with the idea that China wants to make money out of the action, not 5 different people.
Right.
So the Chinese work methodically when they do something, and they look at other people's errors. You know, they look carefully at other people's errors, and they ask questions about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think China looks at this also as a morale booster to the country, right? You know, you can actually boast about this for months, if not years, about this endeavor, right? That you were able to put these people onto the moon and possibly on Mars, which I think that's what their anticipation is, to actually, if they can get it to work on the moon, then they can get it to work on Mars. It wouldn't be that far of a stretch for them.
Right. The technology, the same technology that you're going to use to get out of space, what you're doing is, all you have to do is extend it. Say you're going to go past low Earth orbit, you're going to need that technology to go to Mars. But in going from low Earth orbit to Mars, you're going to need living quarters and all that. So the first step is get to low Earth orbit. Next step is to get beyond low Earth orbit with moon. And then the next step is to get to Mars. So you're just adding on, you know, it's like having a house. You have a bedroom and a kitchen.
Build it
And
from
then
the
you add
ground up.
on living room and all that.
Yeah, you build it from the ground up.
Yep.
All right, this last one is from CNN.com. NASA discovered a black spot on Jupiter 2,200 miles long. A NASA space mission found a large black spot on Jupiter, and it wasn't what you think. Could it be a heretofore unseen phenomenon, or someone's idea of a prank on scientists? It's a moon shadow. The shadow is from Jupiter's volcanically active moon, Lo, eclipsing the sun just like our moon does on Earth. NASA said the spot measured 2,200 miles wide, roughly the distance between New York City and Las Vegas, Nevada. Jupiter, the largest planet in the Milky Way, has several moons that frequently eclipse the sun because of Jupiter's size and the fact that the planet is not highly tilted compared to its orbit, according to NASA. The photo was taken by NASA's solar-powered spacecraft Juno on September 11th during its 22nd full orbit of Jupiter. The spacecraft has been in use since 2011 and entered its initial 53-day orbit around Jupiter on July 4th, 2016. Interesting. I'd really like to see him put some kind of unmanned vehicle into the atmosphere of Jupiter. I'd love to see what happens to it. You know, what are the consequences of achieving an endeavor like this? I mean, I don't know if you can actually land on Jupiter in its in its environment, but I would like to see them go into the atmosphere itself and see what's down there. I mean, using a telescope is one thing, but to actually send a drone, a UAV into its atmosphere to capture images and collect temperature from the environment and send it back to a satellite that sends it back to the to Earth, that would be something phenomenal.
Well, look at what we did the other day. We put up a string of satellites around the Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't we do the same thing around Jupiter? It might not reach all the way around, but if you put up 60 of those,
Mm-hmm.
each, you know, at different locations, the equator, North Pole, South Pole, whatever the case might be, and then you gather information. As you gather information, you turn on the cameras on one and send it into the atmosphere. If it burns up, you know, before you get you're going to get some information, you know, and you'll be learning something about the planet with each one of those satellites that you send in.
Yeah, that would be actually a good idea, but it would probably be very expensive too, right? Because you got to think about the survivability aspect, because you want that drone to come back out and dock itself to the satellite, if possible, and then feed all that information right back. Because I think one of the things that they worry about is littering different planets with their junk.
Well, look, that satellite is going to burn up somewhere in the atmosphere, because it doesn't have the ability to protect itself. There's no shielding on it. What you're trying to do is gather all the information you can about it, first by visual and then by instrumentation. You might have instruments in there that's going to test the atmosphere for all kinds of, say, oxygen, nitrogen, you know, whatever the case might be. What kind of acids are in the atmosphere, if there are any, if there's water there, you know. You're going to be testing all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you send in a string of satellites, like I said, say you send a spacecraft out there has got 50 of them.
Right.
And this spacecraft has got all the control and instrumentation on it.
Mm-hmm.
These satellites gather the information and send it to the mothership, and the mothership is the one that sends it back to Earth. The mothership is not going to go into the atmosphere. You understand?
Right.
And the mothership can monitor and do experiments on the planet.
See, that's a multi-country, multi-state sort of endeavor, right? I don't think NASA would entirely want to do it on its own, or at least if they did, it would be very expensive. You would need a lot of nation-state powers, superpowers, to actually be involved in that. Russia, China, India, all your members of the G20 would have to be involved in you know.
Yeah, but look at what independent people are doing here with this string satellite that they sent up. That's an independent action. There are few companies that are actually doing that on their own right now.
But how would you see? You have to deliver all those satellites to Jupiter, which is a far, far distance, right?
Yeah, but once you get it in a position where, say you going to Jupiter, and you take a swing around, let's see, Earth, and then the next planet out from Earth, you take a swing around that one, it increases the speed. You understand what I'm saying? It's like doing a sling. It increases the speed.
Right.
You are not really using fuel to drive you there.
Gravity.
Right. So once you get on your way, if you're going, I don't know, 50,000 miles per hour or whatever the case might be, when you get into the Jupiter atmosphere, now all you gotta do is slow down the thing and go around the planet, and you make your orbit. You tie the satellite into orbit around the planet, and as the mothership goes around the planet, it drops off these satellites in different locations, and it keeps monitoring these satellites, and these satellites are the ones who are doing all the work on whatever. Each one has got different instruments. Half of them might have one set of instruments, and another half have another set of instruments. You're measuring different things, different capabilities you have for each one. And after a year or so, you send one into the atmosphere. You don't expect it to come back. Yes, it's going to cost you a few $1 million, but each one of those small satellites are not going to cost you $1 million, because the amount of instrumentation on it, the cameras and so forth, it's not going to cost you $1 million for each one of those satellites. And even if you spend $50 million for the operation for the mothership and the satellite, then the information that you're going to get back from sending the ship to Jupiter is going to give you a knowledge of the planet that you can't get from the distance by just looking at it through a telescope. And you're doing this over long term. Your investment is long term. It's like investing and going from Earth to Mars. If you're planning on building a colony on Mars, you're going to have to do the same thing on Mars. You're going to have to send, like what we are doing now is everybody, India is sending one, China is sending one, the US is sending one, the EU is sending one. That's an investment that they are making for the future.
Yeah. I wonder where Black people are going to be on this type of stuff. When I always think about it from that perspective.
Oh, we're going to be late. And the thing is that Black people in America have a lot of experience when it comes to aircraft and space, because a lot of Black people are in positions like that we might not know about. Well, not everybody knows about. You understand? Yep. Like I remember the movie that came up. Was it the beginning of the year, showing these Black women who were involved with NASA going to the moon?
Hidden Figures.
You know what I'm saying?
Hidden Figures.
So there's Black people who, in various stages of this operation, that have the capability. Say if I don't know, 2053, Africa wants to get into the space travel business, or different countries in Africa want to get into the space travel business. Then this Black people in America, along with other Africans who come here and have the knowledge, they went to university, they studied the engineering and all that, and now in Africa building these rockets, we have the ability to do it. Plus everybody who has gone before us is going to leave their legacy. Their rocket technology is going to be available to us. We'll be able to use it for whatever purpose that we need.
Right.
So the United States from 1950 would, you know, all the technology that all the knowledge that America had about going into the space is now available to China, Russia, India. Well, Russia was there from the beginning. So all the other nations are there. You know, they might have come to America and studied in university, learn this knowledge and going back to China or India and put it into practice. But the knowledge is dispersed now. The same thing, that knowledge that they're gaining now is going to be dispersed 30 years from now.
Right. It become open source, publicly available.
Yep. So
Like a
anybody
library.
who wants to build a satellite, all they need is the cost to build a satellite. The technology, especially when you're going to be printing, you're going to have 3D printers that are going to print this thing. You know what I'm saying? So once you can, you have your intelligent, the computers are going to be building these things.
Yep.
You got computers that are going to be designing the spaceship because of knowledge that's been put into the computer itself. We know this work, this work, this work. So the computer's going to, you know what, build this. Computer going to 3D print it. You're going to be 3D printing modules that you can put one in, take one out. That's the way things are going to be in the future.
Right.
And if we go to Mars or if we go to the moon, then you don't have to worry about getting off of Earth because you already have the machinery on Mars or the moon, and you're probably mining the materials that you can use to build your spaceship right there.
All right. Thank you all for joining us, man. Hit the like button if you have not already done so. Share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. If you want IT mentorship and you're trying to get into IT, please leave your contact at the end of this live stream in the comment section underneath the video. One of us will get back to you. Also, if you are trying to transition from one IT position to another and you need coaching, we offer that coaching as well. So with that being said, peace and shalom.
Good night.